that time of the week again.
And this week, I'm genuinely nervous because I'm exiting that comfort zone of jack plugs and guitar pedals and filter boxes and moving into modular synthesis. And this is where the learning curve steepens for me, as I'm sure it's going to for several other members of this community who have, I'm very flattered to say, followed me down the Eurocrack rabbit hole. Sandy's also going to show us how we can all get involved in this modular odyssey for absolutely free. It's a virtual solution, but a very exciting one. Time to unpack my next crack consignment from Rubadub in Glasgow. I've plumped for an IntelliGel Atlantis, an all-in-one synth that's loosely based on the SH101, I believe. Plug her in and we have lights. Nice. What? What did I do? I know, perhaps you're right. You can't start your modular synth journey like this. It would be like doing this and claiming, right, that's my modular, sorted. So back to the drawing board. I asked Alex at Rubadub to get me a simple oscillator and amplifier so I can really get my head around how this all works. So here's the oscillator, a Make Noise STO. And the amp or VCA is also made by Make Noise. It's an Optomix. In they go, and thanks to Peter Coitz, or if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, for recommending Nurleys as an alternative to these pesky screws. Duly purchased, they're on their way. Et voila! I've also bought an IntelliGel MIDI interface which has lots of scary holes in, so I'm going to have to work out which hole plugs into which hole on the oscillator and I think the VCA. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is my first modular crisis. Make Noise, don't make it easy. Their use of terminology and little icons and stuff are just impenetrable. And I also got to learn something about, is it control voltage? Because I think you can make tones and you can change them, I can understand that, but how you control them is something that's completely enigmatic to me. So Sandy, can you be of any help, please, mate?
Hi Christian, let's jump into the computer and have a little look at VCV Rack and why it's particularly useful to me right now, and use it to explain a little bit about CV. Okay, so this is VCV Rack. It's a software emulation of modular synthesizer. I'm going to use it to just cover a couple of the basics of different sort of standard modules, lots of three-letter acronyms that you'll hear, and some of the standard kinds of CV. VCV Rack is free to download. You will have to register to download the plugins, but it's super quick, super easy to configure. I've got mine hooked up just with an audio output here and some MIDI, and that's both coming in from Ableton and going back out to Ableton just for recording and for sequencing some notes. Some of the standard things that you'll need in a sort of typical signal path for a modular synthesizer are let's go into fundamental things here. We have VCOs, that's voltage controlled oscillators. Those are your tone generators. VCF is voltage controlled filter. Kind of does what it says on the tin. If you're watching Christian's channel, I'll assume you know what a low pass and high pass filter are. We also have VCAs, voltage controlled amplifier, voltage controlled attenuator, or voltage controlled amplitude, depending on who you ask. I like voltage controlled attenuator because that's more or less what it's doing. Some of the other things that we have here are LFOs, that's low frequency oscillators, like your VCO, except that it's oscillating, creating an oscillating tone at a value below human hearing, so it's used for controlling things, for sending an undulating signal. We also have envelope generators are another standard thing that you'll see. So there's ADSR, that's attack, decay, sustain, release, and you'll generally need those. And we'll also be loading in some other sort of utility modules just to make patching a little bit easier. But if I just load up two things first, we'll load up a voltage controlled oscillator and a VCA. But if we were just to take the output from our oscillator, let's say a sawtooth wave, straight into our VCA, and then turn that down for now, and straight out to, say, the left output of our system, and turn that up. Pretty boring stuff, but if I turn that up, I can control the frequency here. And depending on the wave, we've also got pulse width and so on. I'm going to disconnect that for now. So as it stands, you can control things with just the knobs. You could just hook up a VCO and plug it straight into your outputs and mess around with the controls, but you're not going to really make anything particularly musical. What we use is control voltage. Those are voltages historically sent from a keyboard controller or a sequencer into your oscillator and other modules, both to tell it when a note starts and what pitch that note should be. Historically, that was what you had. You had CV and gate. CV was your pitch and gate was your note on messages. It's become a little bit more advanced over the years, so we have different standards for pitch. Eurorack typically uses what we call 1 volt per octave, and you'll see on the VCO here, we have a volt per octave control. If I hook that back up again, but this time I'll take some CV into my volt per octave here, we'll see a little light telling us that there's some different voltages on that. And let's just hook that back up to the speakers again. And if I turn this up, this is just some notes that I have sequenced in Ableton sending CV into VCV Rack. So if I turn this up, we have music. Sort of.
So I'm going to stop Sandy there. He does continue in the film. It's absolutely fascinating. I'll save it for future episodes. But I really want to learn these principles 1 or 2 modules at a time. So by Sandy's assertion, my oscillator, when I switch it on and plug it into the output, it should make a continuous tone. This oscillator makes 3 different types of waves, so I'm plugging the first directly into the IntelliGel output module we installed last week. Hey presto. So this controls pitch, and there's different shapers. Here's the second oscillator. And the third sounds super sub. This thing sounds surprisingly awesome. So that for me is my mega breakthrough modular moment. It's just like mind-blowing. Because I come from the MIDI generation, you know, we think of, you know, these triggers, these keys that we press down as the moment where all the action happens. But actually, with modular, stuff is going on in the background and you're just opening and closing, filtering and unfiltering. With MIDI, it's not a simple single piece of voltage that's going through. It's a whole package, a folder, if you will, of information. And I now understand why my MIDI to CV converter module has several different CV outputs, because basically what it's doing is unpacking this MIDI information and putting them into separate control voltages. And I guess why I'm kind of so excited about this is what I thought I didn't know, I do kind of know. There is some connective tissue there. My land of the known, the jack plug, the filter box, the side chain, the gate, these are all connected. All we're doing is dealing with voltages and signals that are being unpacked by this folder of MIDI information. And for each signal, we need a different module to basically do stuff with it. So if I've got this right, I just basically need to plug in the VCA to switch the signal off, and then attach a MIDI keyboard to control this VCA, I think. So out she goes. First reconnect the out of the output unit to the out of the VCA, and then connect the out of the oscillator to the in of the VCA. Lovely. Now that's the attenuator, and there's a tasty little LPF there too. Next up, plug the gate out from the MIDI interface to the gate controller on the VCA. As expected, it mutes the sound. Now let's try attaching a MIDI keyboard, which should send some voltage to the gate portion of the MIDI interface, which in turn should send some gate controller voltage to the VCA. Bingo! The keyboard opens and closes the gate, but hang on. Now I expected it to also control the pitch, but if I think about that, that is actually a separate parameter. So note on, note off is, you know, a voltage going in and going out, as you would with, I guess, a side chain and a gate. So pitch is yet another control voltage that I need to plug into something. So pitch controller from the MIDI interface goes to the 1 volt per octave controller of the oscillator. And lo and behold, and I can't tell you how euphoric I feel. I don't know, is Eurocrack like heroin? I believe heroin, the first time you take a hit, every hit thereafter, you're striving for that first sensation. So for me, my first hit is the MIDI keyboard being plugged into the MIDI converter, being plugged into the VCA, which is controlling an oscillator, and music comes out. I'm high as a kite. So Sandy, how's your box getting along?
My build is coming along reasonably well. Unfortunately, the box that I was building is sort of on the back burner for now. My friend Brian, who's helping me build that, is a drummer and he's on tour in Europe. So in the meantime, that gives me a really good excuse to crack on and build some modules to go in this thing. So I had the decision between continuing with our 1U row, where I had my output module and my power module, and putting some more utilities in there, or jumping in at the deep end a bit and building some of the 3U modules to go along the bottom. I've opted to go for the more complicated 3U module builds in the interest of having this thing make some sound soon. So I've ordered some of those parts today. It's not the most exciting process, I haven't documented it today, but let me know if you want to know how to find the bill of materials for these things, where I've ordered them from, and some of the pitfalls of that. I'll happily go into that if anyone wants to try and build these things along at home too. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to be ordering some parts. Face plates, we're getting some quotes on fabricating some of those face plates, and I'm going to get those digitally printed, and hopefully those will arrive around about the same time as the parts. We'll find out. So I'll keep you updated on the build next week.
Thanks, Sandy. I'm really excited to see your progress, and if anyone here is interested in seeing where Sandy is sourcing all of these bits, I'm certainly very interested. Please holler up, and I'm sure he'll be obliging. Right, because I'm a bit of a slag, and I did nearly fall down Arthur's seat, and I did plumb in the things I do for this vlog, and because I've already plugged in my Atlantis, well, and you know, powered it up, it'd be a shame not to have a little listen, wouldn't it? So let's unspaghetti and plug the Atlantis directly into the output module. Steamy. So I'm going to change the format a bit. From this episode on, I'm going to, at the end of the episode, talk about what I want to learn next week, so you, the community, can contribute to the narrative of the next film. Next week, I'm going to be looking at ADSR, and I'm really terrified about that because Alex has recommended I use my maths module as my ADSR for the 2 modules that I've already kind of racked up. The other thing that I think you'll all be probably commenting and thinking about is organisation of the racks, the modular system. And I'd be very interested to know if there are protocols in that respect and any assistance that you may have. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you like what I do, hit like. If you haven't subscribed, hit subscribe. And if you want to be notified, ring that bell. And this week, I'm genuinely a little bit nervous because I'm kind of exiting the area of the... Oscar, come on, out of the way, mate. And this week,